Hello, everyone. Ian Hamilton here with Good Virtual Reality here, joined by Ashley Pinnick. And I was looking over all the projects you've been involved in, and I wanted you to run through them and to tell everyone what you've been involved in and how you got involved in VR.
Sure, yes, happy to be here. There's been a lot of different projects I've touched over the years. I'd say, even starting back in college, actually, which is when I first got into VR, because I've been working on VR, XR projects in general since about 2014. So, I was in art school at that time and got my mom to meet someone at a 7-Eleven to get a DK2 off Craigslist for me
Oh,
so that I
wow.
could, yeah, so that I could explore making my own game in Unity and just kind of like starting from a place of curiosity and interest as like a lifelong gamer, somebody who's been always very interested in like where art and technology and science kind of collide. So that's really what started me off on this journey is I kind of ended up just falling into it out of curiosity and intrigue of this like space that was kind of reopening because I was aware of kind of the virtuality era of VR if I remember correctly, you know, back in the 1990s when I was a young kid. Um and seeing this kind of new wave was super interesting to me. I was also looking for a place for myself as an artist who was interested in lots of different things and I didn't feel like I really fit in the program I was in. I didn't feel like I really fit in a space. And I saw this kind of open field of, you know, places to explore with virtual reality. So I kind of reformatted my whole last year at art school around making my game and showed it as my kind of thesis project at the graduation and all of that. And then just really tried to find a place for myself and say, like, okay, well, there can't be that many people out there. I just need to find whoever they are and start figuring it out. So from there, I worked on a lot of different projects and kind of started off at a advertising studio at first who were working on kind of activations and little things for supporting movies. So we made like an augmented reality photo booth for an Alice in Wonderland movie that came out around 2015. And I got to ship that, and it was at D23 in Anaheim, like the Disney convention. We made a Blair Witch like VR game, a little Ghostbusters 360 video, a lot of little things. And at the time, I was also working on my indie game that I had started in art school and ended up working on Tilt Brush after that by just responding to a job posting on the internet. And kind of since then have been able to touch a lot of other projects um, like working with folks at Alchemy Labs on Cosmonious High, working on a couple titles with Lighthouse, who did Color Space VR, and a science-based RPG called Nano, as well as working on more recent games like Starship Home and now some other things with Creature. And so, yeah, a lot of different things I've touched over the years, but it's all been a wild ride and a lot of fun.
I love it. There's so much. There's all the eras of VR to go through here,
Mhm.
that you've touched on through these projects. So, you said you used the DK2 for that final project in college? Is that, or did you have a
Yes.
Rift by that time?
No, DK2. Like I said, I had my mom meet someone from Craigslist at a 7-Eleven to get it to me and shipped it to me in LA at the time and, used that primarily on like a 40-pound, like, gigantic, like, Mac, desktop that could barely run anything. But yeah, I
Oh,
showed it.
wow, you ran a
Yeah.
DK2 on a Mac, congratulations.
I had no choice. It was a bro you know, I didn't have money for a new computer. But yeah, I showed that project as my sort of capstone project. I ended up showing it at SIGGRAPH later that year in the VR Village. I think it was the first one that they did. And just tried to start kind of putting myself out there. Around that same time, I also tried Tilt Brush for the first time in a demo at VRLA, and that kind of
Mhm.
blew my mind, and had me really thinking about tools and multimedia and stuff, and so, it was a real treat to work on that project as well.
Well, let's start with Tilt Brush here. And I definitely want to talk about Color Space. I have
Mhm,
very fond memories of Color Space, and what a beautiful app. But Tilt Brush, I remember when Google open sourced it. I can't remember which of the co-founders wrote the line about immortality, that committing it to open source was immortality. And then
mhm.
today, I see the program living on in places like Figment XR. There's multi-brush, there's open brush, and it's always magical to me when I see this, these familiar lines that I can draw in space. And gosh, I just had someone show me a piece of art that they made in one of those. I think it might have been multi-brush. And, a lot of feeling comes across using those brushes even today. And I guess take me back to that time of seeing this work of art create works of art. What was that like to kind of see this project go out there, and were you surprised by what people made with it?
It's a great question. I mean, I've always been a big fan of seeing artists take tools and use them in ways you don't expect. And I think that Tilt Brush is absolutely a great case where artists were constantly surprising us. And I felt very lucky to be like the artist on the team that got to try out the new tools and help develop them and help create, scenes where people could see what the possibilities were. That made things really, really fun and interesting. And seeing how people could interpret the tools was really incredible. I think that there's lots of little things that we saw people do, especially with the release of a new set of brushes that we had released, I think, in 2017, that included the Hull brush, which allowed you to like create more sculptural forms that our graphics programmer, Jeremy Cowles, just like came up with one day. He was like, I've been thinking about this. And we were like, that's going to change everything. It's going to make it incredible and so much more, volumetric and helping people create spaces in these different ways. And I've loved to see how Tilt Brush has continued to live on in these other apps, like recognizing brushes exactly like what you said. It makes me super happy when I see something and I can identify the different shaders that we've worked on and the different things that like Drew originally made when he was creating like the first set of brushes for Tilt Brush is really incredible. I've even seen when I was in Tokyo in I think 2018, there were bumpers for like Japan's MTV where they were, like, doing a music video countdown and all the number little video vignettes had been made with Tilt Brush. And I was, like, so pleased seeing that, it made
Mhm.
me so happy. It was randomly just on TV in Japan, so fun. I think there's been a lot of aspects where people have surprised me with the way that they've used Tilt Brush, though, pushing the boundaries on what they can render, pushing the boundaries on, like, how they could create these beautiful, like, illustrative, soft scenes with a lot of brushes that feel very hard-edged, and the way that a lot of artists have different styles that they can express using this very limited set of brushes is, always a treat. Really, really fun.
I don't wanna make you, like, emotional, but maybe I do, but what was it like to see that shutdown? Right? Do you remember that day? Is it burned into your brain? Sort of walk me through what it meant to sort of know that that project was gonna be open sourced and not gonna be the same as it was.
Sure. I mean, I think it being open sourced honestly is not a sad day for me at all. That's a happy day because then our work doesn't just end up in like the graveyard of things that has died at Google, you know? And there's all these machinations of a corporation that I could never fully understand, right? Like, I'm a person that just wants to make my weird stuff, and I'm grateful to be able to try and navigate that and make something for as long as I can in the space that supports it. So I feel like with Tilt Brush being shut down, I was absolutely, really sad about that being something that was coming. But more than anything, it was about the prospect of not working with the people that I had been working with on this project than anything else. I felt like we were able to really find a way to support each other and work super well. And honestly, still is probably the best team experience that I've had in my life. I learned so much from those people by being like the person who had graduated from college a year and a half ago, just kind of waltzing in, like, how can I help? I don't know. And learning a lot from everybody, and surprising myself about how much I could already do and know and being supported and allowed to grow. That I think is the part of it that makes me emotional is thinking about how everybody that I worked with was always there to support me and support everybody else on the team and really had our best interest at heart and in mind. So I feel like with open sourcing Tilt Brush, that really gives us an opportunity to share good feelings with other people and allow like all of the community that sprung up around it that was full of incredible artists and developers to then do more with it than we ever could because we have to also navigate the realities of being part of a very large company who's not focused on, creating immersive tools for artists.
Yeah. And then you ended up working with Alchemy and Cosmonious High, but before that I think before that would have been Color Space, right? Can you explain what Color Space is and how you got involved with that project? Because it's a really lovely idea, but I would love to. There's probably not a lot of people that know what that is. So can you explain what
Sure.
that is and how you got involved?
Absolutely, I absolutely can. So, as I mentioned, Tilt Brush getting wound down, folks kind of moving on to other projects and companies, all of that was sort of happening. And I, um, I had moved and joined a studio for a little while, came back to Google and was working on Stadia for about a year during the pandemic with some folks from Tilt Brush. And um, around February 2021, we all got laid off. They shut down the studio, and, then it was this big question of, like, "What am I gonna do next?" I didn't feel like I was in a place where I wanted to work full time at a studio. I'd interviewed with a lot of people who I thought were really wonderful, but I just didn't feel like any of it was a clear yes. It didn't feel right. And then I met David Sarno, who was, the head of Lighthouse, and he reached out to me and said, "Oh, I saw you were looking for work. I'm familiar with your work on Tilt Brush, and I'm curious if you're open to any freelance work. Like, I can't hire you full time, but would you be open to freelance?" And honestly, I really credit David in pushing me in a direction that I hadn't considered, which was that maybe I have the resources to be independent. And for the last almost it's 5 years this year that I've been working as like an independent developer, partnering with other studios, and it's been the best experience. And David reaching out and just asking that question and making me comfortable and giving me a project like Color Space to contribute to is really wonderful. And just to touch on what Color Space was essentially like a VR coloring book and just a really charming, really cozy, really relaxing project that I felt like had such universal appeal in creating these scenes that come alive as you color them and transform as you color them. It's really, really a great fit for VR and also something that I could put on anybody's face and allow them to just kind of drink in the world and enjoy. One of the few projects I worked on where I could put it on people in my family and have them immediately just like relax a little bit and have some fun. Like that and Tilt Brush really, or one of the few projects where people didn't feel immediately kind of overwhelmed and instead felt sort of
Mm.
comfort and coziness.
I love it. Yeah. And so I want to go back to something you said. You just want to make weird art and it's uh you want to make your weird stuff. And I've heard that almost universally across the space. There's these artists that are off in their offices in many places that can be a little lonely. But they're also like they find such connection by just creating spatial art and getting this canvas of space that is unlimited allows them to kind of like just let their imagination go wild. And I just love to hear this kind of um the same feeling that you're expressing amongst so many other creators in this space of like why why would I use a flat canvas when I can just be weird in space? Like, it's not just you. It's kind of like this universal rallying cry that I hear from a lot. And I guess, I don't know what the question is here, more than just like, have you ever had was there ever a time over this whole journey where you felt like VR wasn't going to be uh, a successful medium?
That's a really good question, and I totally hear you about the, wanting to make weird art thing. That is still the rallying cry I feel every day when I wake up and wanna make something, and I think that a lot of us just see VR as this space that has a little bit more flexibility in some ways to hold some of our weirder ideas than these other spaces that have more constraints or more kind of like rules that you need to go by. Because, of course, there are patterns and things like that that you should consider about designing for VR. But there's still so much more to explore. I think that a time where I thought that maybe that the space was not going to survive, certainly. I think that the first kind of downturn, um, of PC VR as we were kind of transitioning to all-in-one headsets was a disorienting time for me. I think probably because, looking back on it, it's like a few years into my professional career, trying to navigate multiple types of spaces and understanding my place in it at kind of the same time. So I think I was personally going through like some growing pains of my own, as well as seeing the industry go through their own growing pains. And I'm glad that we've all stayed together. But certainly, I think that that time was interesting to see whether or not there could be that conversion to another generation of headsets and um, new forms of like multiplayer and different types of experiences that could be made possible. I think that that was really the time, though, that I was questioning whether or not the space could survive.
Mm. I totally remember that time. I get that feeling. I think the reason I'm keying in on the weird art thing is um, a couple reasons, right? Like you get these standalone headsets like Quest, Pico, even I guess you could extend it to Galaxy XR and Vision Pro, where you don't quite have the rendering power of a personal computer there to really draw the light that you would really wanna see. And so, like, it's this reduced space. It's this you can't quite do as much with it. It's almost like the canvas is a little bit muted, in some way. And I've heard it in the community, repeated for years of, like, I don't know, questification of the market where just the reason that people got into this kind of went out the door a little bit when they lost that kind of canvas. In a more, I don't know, abstract way, I remember having conversations with people at Meta, and I was trying to get them to like categorize what kind of device they're making. Are you making a communications device? Are you calling it a personal computer? And they're like dodging those questions. They're not really answering them. And I don't know, with good reason, I guess. But it's sort of this, the it comes back to this weird art thing where
Mm,
I love to use computers to do weird things. I like to just use it to create weird stuff. And it in some of these instances with the standalone devices, it feels like the device is using me more, in that opposite you're the product type way. And I'm not getting that kind of space to do the weird stuff like I used to. I does any of that ring like true to you? Do you have any kind of that vibe going on over there?
so I think that to some degree, yes. I think that the sort of pioneering feeling that I'm sure, I feel like a lot of people that I knew at the early stages of the upswing of PC VR, like that kind of changes a few years later when it feels like the winds are blowing in a different direction and people who have been like forging in one direction now need to decide whether or not they want to continue doing that or whether or not they need to, kind of reassess the way that they design or the way that they think about the systems that they're building and the weird art that they're making. I think it's disorienting for a lot of people. For me personally, I think that there was certainly a transition. And when we started porting Tilt Brush to Quest and started working on bringing that to all-in-one VR, like, we had a lot of trade-offs that we had to consider, different things that we kind of relied on for the look of Tilt Brush that we had to, reverse engineer and create new solutions for, and so that was, a transition that taught us a lot, but I think also, like you said, it kinda highlights the, constraints of the space, and I think that by creating the all-in-one headset, certainly it feels a little bit more buttoned up in the sense that it's less like, um, this, piece of hardware you can plug into anything and it just, you can start playing around with it and you can share, executables with each other super easily and, like, go to the weird little website and get somebody's, little demo and things like that. It's a little bit less like that and a little bit more
Mm,
like a phone, right? Which does feel
yeah.
more like you're the product. So I definitely hear that. I think it just feels different.
It does, yeah, and I'm hoping we're coming around to kind of like a golden era. I don't know, maybe I'm hoping too much, but like I've been going to at this point, like I don't want to go to events unless I can bring my own headset and uh, maybe come with the app pre-installed that I get to experience with other people. Because like I hate going to these events using a stranger's headset that I don't know if it's been cleaned properly, and um, I've got my headset at home fitted just right. Like I've got the
Mhm,
IPD tuned in, and the strap is my kind of comfort, and I want exactly like kind of what you're saying. I also want to like load up a weird thing at this event and just explore in it. And this golden era that I'm kind of hoping for, I'm is hopefully seeing um co-location happening more often where I get to not be so cut off from everyone else. I also
mhm,
hope to see like a split rendering system where the headset's handling a bunch of the rendering, but then also I get this nearby Mac or PC that can render a whole lot of very pretty things for me to look at. And I hope that the walls come down a little bit that have been thrown up in front of people so that we can experience all of these things again. Um, let's move on to Cosmonious High. So tell me what Cosmonious High was.
So, Cosmonious High is a super charming adventure game set in a science fiction sort of high school that revolves around all of these different sort of alien students that you interact with, and you're like the first of like a different species that hasn't ever been at this school, and you're like discovering your powers while exploring this school. It's like a classic alchemy game in that there's tons of fun physics puzzles and silly humor and charming characters and things like that.
And how long were you at Alchemy?
So, alchemy was another one of my contract clients. They were another early one. I worked with David at Lighthouse on a couple titles in between, one of them being Color Space, but I was with the folks at Cosmo High for about 4 or 5 months. They had, chatted with me about just trying to kind of really help define the, quality bar for their, shipped art. So they had an amazing art team. Carrie Wint is an incredible art director there who's, a really great, person to be kind of, following their direction, as well as a ton of great artists there, but they just had areas where the game felt like it wasn't quite up to where they wanted it to be and needed somebody who could come in and just kind of be like, "Okay, this is how we're approaching this aspect of the game. This is how we're approaching this aspect of the game," and kind of help, set that and help just kind of execute, finish the game, and, have it feel as good as it needed to.
Hmm. And then how did you get involved with Creature and Starship Home? So I
Yeah.
kind of kicked off my podcast here independently by talking to Doug North Cook, and I called him the most important developer in the world today, which he laughed at and tried to tear down my labeling of him. But I've honestly been going down the roster a little bit of the people involved with Creature because it seems like Creature's projects and their focus is kind of like keeping I don't know, keeping the lights on for VR, so to speak. The focus on immersive virtual reality as this medium that is still being discovered and honed in on what makes a good project in this space. So I want to know how you got sort of involved with that project and uh, maybe tell me whether I'm wrong in calling him the most important developer in the world today.
Oh, I could see why Doug would laugh at that and try to push back, but I hear what you're saying. I think that Doug and what he's been trying to do with Creature is, really great and needed in our space. Just somebody who's, like, uncompromising in the vision of trying to support developers in making incredible games that fit this space, and trying to also showcase what the medium can do in ways that aren't just about creating a demo, but really trying to flesh out ideas and use features in new novel ways that show that gameplay can be elevated by mixed reality and different things like that. So I think that Doug and I think the Creature is doing important work in the space. Even if I wasn't involved, I feel like seeing some of the games that are coming out from the different people on the label are so inspiring. Like, I love the folks at Funktronic. I've been a fan of them since forever, and, seeing stuff like Cubism and Laser Dance and all these other things coming out, it's really inspiring, I think, as an artist to see, so much good work put next to each other. As far as how I got involved with Creature, kinda in between working on Color Space and Nano, which was the other Lighthouse game, and then Cosmonious High. The two co-founders of Tiltbrush had kind of forged out for a while as also independent freelancers, Patrick Hackett and Drew Skillman. And the three of us came back together and worked on a small game for the Quest Pro called Slime Ball that was like a little showcase of face tracking. And so I'd been reconnected with Drew and Patrick. I love working with them. They're like two of my favorite people in the world. So it was a real treat to be able to work with them on that project, which was just a quick little game. And then around that time that we were winding down Slimeball, Patrick had actually reached out to me and said that he knew somebody who was looking for an art director. I was looking for my next contract at the time and had a couple things that I was thinking about, but I hadn't quite, solidified any agreements with anyone. And when I met Doug, he really just told me about what he was trying to accomplish with Starship Home. Creature wasn't really like a thing yet with a name or a label or like a mission at that point, but I could really tell that Doug wanted to make something weird. Doug wanted to make something interesting. He wanted to make something that was challenging. And for me, as like an artist who has been working in this space for a while and is interested in both the technical and creative sides of making things, that's like really great fit for me because there's opportunities to kind of try to make something that you want to see or make something that you want to share with people when you're working with somebody who is excited about pushing the boundaries. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's really great. So, I think we've covered some of your work history, but a lot of the very VR centric parts of your work history. And I want to switch off to just ask you some freeform questions here on just what are your favorite things in VR that you haven't worked on?
That's a good question. I feel like there's so many awesome art apps out there. I've loved being able to pop into things like OpenBrush and Multibrush and like you said, Figment and Gravity Sketch and all of those types of things and Substance Modeler, which was Medium before that. All of those types of things I think always grab my attention. I mentioned before Funktronic. I really love their game Fuji, which is just gorgeous and meditative, and it's musical and just delicious. Again, before I was um, hooked in with Creature, like the games from the folks who made Thrasher. I love that kind of like the rhythm violence sort of vibe. Incredible. Anything that's kind of psychedelic, meditative, and
Mm.
like
Have you seen
sometimes
Kevin Mack stuff?
tell me a title. Maybe, maybe
Kevin
not.
Mack, he's done a VR chat, world, Amandala,
I'll have
let
to look
me
him up.
Kevin Mack art, and I was just thinking about him, but, Kevin Mack
I'm looking at
art,
it. Super cool,
and
like really psychedelic and fun.
yeah, you're saying you love psychedelic.
Mhm.
He does these blobs, and he's been, yeah, Anandala was one big one. Namawanki, that's a VR chat world, and I did a tour of Namawanki, and there's like the sky whale that flies over your head. Yeah, you've got to go check out this VR chat world if you can get a chance. Where he's got like, if you go underwater or go to these different spots, he'll have visions that you can take, and you just press your button on the object. It's this weird alien object, and suddenly you're instantly teleported to this uh secondary space,
Mhm.
psychedelic space where he's got like crazy psychedelic music that he produced in the 1980s playing. Um so yeah, I highly recommend checking out
I just
Namawanki
looked him
if you
up.
can.
Yeah. It looks incredible. This is right up my alley. I think other things that appeal to me in the VR space, I really have always loved cyan games. And so I've thought it's really cool that they had put out I think it was Abduction was in VR and I haven't played Firmament yet, but really would love to play that. And I also really enjoy just being able to like, step into people's brains, and so anything like that where I feel like I'm stepping into somebody's brain, is, very interesting to me, so, yeah.
Yeah, I'll try to get Kevin Mack on the podcast at some point because he's such a fascinating individual, and it's exactly up your alley of what you love in VR. So I guess stepping out of VR, what is your favorite flat art? What appeals to you outside of this medium?
Oh, a lot of different things. Right now, I've been running this like parallel thread of, it's just kind of random. Like it's something that's just become a bug in my brain. About public art and making like art in worlds for the community. Like, how can I take my VR brain and like apply it to a real space. And so I've been learning more about like what's out there for that and applying to different things to see if I can get a grant to like make a crazy world of creatures that you can literally go to and experience. So I've been inspired by and looking at a lot of things like that. I also really enjoy animation is a huge inspiration of mine across a lot of different types of genres and things like that. I was just trying to get my brother to watch some 80s anime that I really like just yesterday, just badgering him to go and watch Crusher Joe and Dirty Pair Project Eden and Megazone 2 3 and a bunch of wacky 80s anime. I'm also
I'm
really
I'm gonna have to
interested
look
in.
these up. I haven't gone
Yeah.
far. I haven't gone much past Akira and the, Totoro. Yeah, those that's about
These
as
are
far
like
as I go.
I'd say like Akira adjacent in a lot of ways. And I think what's cool about a lot of it is there's like this sci-fi angle, gorgeous action, really delicious visual effects, like just fun adventures. But things like Crusher Joe or Megazone have a kind of psychedelic angle to them as well, which I really enjoy. And so that's one area for me, I think, is animation. And then I also think just art in general. I just got for my birthday from my best friend, she bought me a book of Lee Bowery, who's like an incredible kind of proto club kid from the late 80s. He was also a muse, I think, of Lucian Freud, the fine art painter, if I'm not mistaken. But just, like, really incredible fashion, and, like, you see it show up now a lot in, like, club kid drag spaces, things like that, but just always interested in, like, the weird people in the corners doing their things and trying to, push boundaries or express themselves in new ways.
Mm. I was talking to Kay Guillory. I don't know if you know Kay Guillory, but one of my early blog posts on the site was, she invited, a furry into her living room. She they used a scan of their living room and
Mhm.
then shared that with the guest so that the guest felt cozy in their living room as their furry avatar from VR chat, and then did a portrait of the furry in their living room. And they're calling it immersivism is the art practice,
Mhm.
which is just fascinating to me. I'd love to learn a lot more about it and get more artists out there. If since you've got schooling behind you, if you had an artist coming up now in 2026, what is your recommendation for how to use technology to sort of um, not deal with e- there's a lot of talk about AI and its effect on artists. What would be your advice to an artist coming up now to sort of not just grate against that problem and actually succeed against it?
It's a great question. It's definitely something that's been on my mind. There's so much consternation and frustration, and I think like discussion and all of that online about AI, and it's definitely, I think, been something that seems like a huge sticking point for so many artists who just really want to not feel like their work is going to be, eaten by this machine and spat back out. I think it's more nuanced than that. I think that for an artist who is coming up now, I would say having a voice, a point of view, and having taste. Having a point of view and having taste is super important because at the end of the day, like, especially as you mature and grow as an artist, there's going to be a number of years where you're just trying to get good enough to get hired. And then you have the mileage of proving yourself and getting through these projects and learning more about yourself and your creative craft. But has been on my mind as I have eclipsed the, like, 12-year mark of my, of my professional career of like, okay, so what comes next? Like, how do you continue to grow as an artist and not just be somebody who churns out, dozens and dozens of assets for a game? What does that mean? And I think that having a point of view and having something you want to share, having taste, that kind of stuff is applicable across so many different mediums, so many different spaces. It transcends tools, it transcends software. Having something to offer from your perspective, because that is the one thing that we have is our brains and our creativity and the way that we recognize patterns or the way that we see the world. Like that's the thing that where it comes back again to just trying to make your weird art. Like, what is that? What is that? How do you express that? And how do you express that across any surface that you come in contact with?
Mm, I love that. Going back to the beginning, was the DK2 your first VR? Was that your first time interacting with VR?
Yes, actually. I was aware of VR from, popular media in the 90s and never really had an opportunity to try it. I grew up in a rural community in central Arizona, and it's not like there was stuff like that available to me. If I saw it
Uh,
on TV, then okay, cool. My dad was very into emerging technology as far as one could afford it for your home. So we had the internet pretty early. I was experimenting with multimedia as a kid, and I think that that's what drew me to VR is like those the same kind of rawness. And so yeah, DK2 was my first thing when my mom got it from the random guy off Craigslist and mailed it to me. That was my first VR.
yeah, I'm so obsessed with that bit of story there, right? Like that was someone deciding that DK2 wasn't for them, right? Like VR wasn't for them. At the same time, it
Yep.
became your entry point into everything else you've done since then. And just also the window of you being able to get it up and running on your Mac before they ripped out the Mac support out of the Oculus dev kit. I mean, that was a very small window that you had to get into to get your system up and running. Um, I love all that. So, is there anything else we haven't covered that would help people understand your journey in immersive art?
That's a good question. I feel like we've touched on a lot of the different things that I've worked on. I will say that I think that with everything that I've been doing since Starship Home and with Starship Home, like I said, I've been trying to explore what is it like to make work, beyond just one medium or one space, and how do you make things that feel immersive in the real world. That's something that I'm thinking about and trying to sort of translate through sculpture and projection and augmented reality and things like that. So I'm hoping that in time, as the space also continues to mature and have other ways of kind of interacting with the world around you, that my work can continue to kind of grow in that way. But yeah, I feel like I just wanna see more people making their weird art and their weird
Mhm.
games, and I want everybody to have that support so that they can make great art that needs to be seen, especially with just all the darkness in the world. I think we need more of what makes us feel connected and inspired and, creative in this space.
I love that. Yeah, there's such a uh as much as we adore the connection that we find in headsets, it's hard to feel seen sometimes. VR can being alone in your office, toiling away in a headset can be kind of lonely. And there's a lot we can do, I think, together and apart to kind of make other people feel seen, to to praise people for their art. We've thrown a lot of names at each other here of various projects that are, I hope, listeners out there have never heard about, and maybe go look them up. I guess it's a good time to pitch your website here. ashleypinnick.com, Pinnick, ASHLEYPINNICK. You can, I assume, find links to all of these projects through your website. So if you haven't seen Starship Home, for example, you can see one of the first sort of real serious attempts at mixed reality gaming, turning your whole room into a magic school bus type ship that goes off into the wilderness and then the wilderness of the universe, and then comes back with things for you to have in your space. Laser Dance is another project from Creature that is really impressive. But I just want to make the pitch out there that if you enjoyed this conversation, I did my best over this conversation with you to try to like highlight artists that we are inspired by that are interesting and share them out. And you can make an artist feel seen and really make their day um, by naming them, by telling them that telling the world that you loved their work. Is there anyone else you would want to call out before we close out this podcast that I don't know has affected you, or you want other people to notice their art?
Yeah, I mean, great question. There's so many people it would be hard for me to think of everybody on the spot, but I'd say that other people I know who have been working in and around this space that do important and interesting work. I'd say Jasmine Kano, who works at Alchemy now on accessibility, like is an incredible, smart, just wonderful human being who not only has like a ton of experience understanding making art and design
They
for
they just
VR, but
announced the snap turning button for hand tracking, which is
yeah,
fantastic.
yeah, yeah, yeah. She does incredible work. And then one of my very good friends, Paisley Smith, who she is a filmmaker who has made VR films and produced VR films over the years. And she is just such like a creative wellspring of a person who is always there to look at what you're working on and gas you up and make you feel like you're doing important, good work. I think those are two people in this space who I've always just really enjoyed having as friends and all other creators who I can see doing great work. There's so many people, it's hard for me to say that that's just the two people, but the community of people who are making VR, XR, any of your requisite Rs are always so free and open in terms of how they share and give their time and support for others. And I think that that's a really special aspect of the work that we do together.
Well, thank you for the time, Ash. Hope to have you back sometime, and can't wait to see what other projects you work on in the future. And yeah, thank you for the time, and we'll talk to you later.
Thank you so much. Have a good day.